Hello, programming engineers. Welcome back once more to this drive course. And in our previous class, I asked you guys to help me out by basically exploring our simulator to experiment that you basically try to destroy the drive, okay? Mostly just so that you guys can see what everything is about. Just a little bit over the surface. So now I'm going to explain you guys a little bit about the user interface, or the, as I like to call it, the display. Now, what are the main components in the screen? Why are they main components? I'm talking about not only Danfoss, but Iakawa, Hitachi, all the Rockwell Automation PowerFlex, Siemens, any brand. Okay, all drives are going to have their screen or their display. And 90% of the cases, they should have these keys for the alphanumeric control, which is basically the display as such, which is the interface between the computer, which in this case is the drive, and the user, which in this case is us. We, through this screen, we are going to transmit our drive what we require, what we need to control. Speed, velocity, motor data, acceleration ramps, deceleration ramps, speed, minimum speed, max speed, everything that is that has to do with the motor and how you want it to control. It's going to be done through this screen, okay? And through this keyboard. Now, what else do we have here in our interface? We have our alphanumeric display, which is a very easy display, depending on the model. And it also could be a little bit more complex. Like, for example, this drive does this graph. Now, navigation keys, upwards, downwards, to the left, or to the right. Okay? So an enter key or accept key is, in this case, the OK. So in this case, you should be the run or the set, depending on this brand. However, this drive should have that accept key. So for example, here in this drive or in this interface, if you notice, it's pretty easy. Okay? The Japanese companies love to play it simple. They don't really like to overcomplicate things. Okay? So in this case, the Danfoss company, they added many keys that they consider would be beneficial to us as users to misunderstand things. But what I really like about Japanese hardware is that they make it very simple. Both of these interfaces, they do exactly the same thing. So we have the back key, okay, or the U-turn, okay, like a cell phone. Basically the same thing as a cell phone. When you want to go back to your previous menu, that's the back key, okay, which is this one. Now here, I'm not sure if it's this one or the stop key, but it should be in any one of those keys. So the menu input key. In this case, it's in programming or program button, which is the enter key to the parameters, the status, or for its motor. Okay, now here we actually have two keys, which are to go into the menu. which is the quick menus and main menu key. So ultimately, or finally, we have our motor start. So generally, they either have it manual or automatic. And generally, it's only one button. So this is the run part. Okay. Now here we have two types of starts. The manual start, which is the hand-on key, and here we enter our hertz value, and here we are indicating that it is running at that speed, which is 20 hertz. We also have our automatic part, which is basically a sequence. If we would like to program it within our drive, so that we can tell it for how long is it going to be starting, or what's going to be the digital input. So anything that we could program with this should be already configured with this to start. Okay, it's being done automatically here through the drive. And then we have the motor stop, which in this case it's the stop or the reset. We also have a reset button to reestablish all configurations that we got, or to clean out or wipe out any alarms that are activated. So this part is, the stop is on the off part on this one. So here we're going to stop this, and we basically eliminate all speed. So here in the other drive, it's this other stop button. We have here our reset part, and here we go. Now, finally, we have our potency meter. I like the ones that have the potency meter included. Also, they look, I don't know, the drives look kind of cute because I've seen them small. They have their potency meter, but they're basically pretty useful for its standalone run. For whenever the operator needs something very quickly to jog the machine or to move the machine. That's why it has two speeds. So one, it has the minimum, maximum speed, but we can control our speed manually through our potency meter. And they have here on this side our Danfoss drive, but it doesn't have that potency meter. So how else are we going to control our speed? Through our keyboard. Well, obviously through our keys. So we have to configure this on our menu, our main menu. So this is basically what our potency meter does. You can't find this in a drive? Don't worry about it. Then solve it through your keyboard. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you what our parameter types are. This classification is the most general one, speaking about specifically all brands. Now, there are many parameters for general functioning. What do I mean by this? The parameters are going to help us in entering data to our drive. So this is to communicate what we wish to control. This is to enter any data through our drive. Okay, and that interface, that is going to be to communicate to your controller. Okay? So our parameters are divided in different categories. There's many different categories that already exist in our current drives. For example, we have very robust drives, which basically fit over 2,000 parameters. 2,000 parameters, that's a lot of information. But the reality is that we are only going to use 5% of all of our 2,000 parameters, even less even. So don't worry about this, guys. Don't worry about learning all the parameters. Okay, this is only a useful and important tip. So don't feel bad if you open your manual and you see 2,000, 3,000. I think there's some drives that have more than 4,000 parameters or 4,000 parameters. So, but still, don't worry about this, guys. You should not have to use all of them. It all depends on the application. So while I'm talking to you about this course, it's basically about configuration and programming for our drives. All this course is very, very practical, very basic, very intuitive, so that you guys are able to handle drives without any big issue. So the right methodology is what I had already said. How to learn the applications for induction motors. Okay, so drives, we can also see the way that they work, but that shouldn't take longer than 2 or 3 hours. So in reality, what we're really interested in, and what you guys should also be interested in, are parameters. Okay, you guys need to understand, basically with your eyes closed, that if you get any drive with any brand, you know the right procedure to do so. Okay, guys? I took a course. I can't remember how long ago. It was many years ago. A drives course. And believe it or not, the first class was all about learning about induction motors. Okay, and it was a lot of information, 8 hours information, with very boring talks. Second day, what is a drive? All right, okay. Third day, they were telling me all about what the rectifying part is. And our next day was the direct current filter. And the last day, the inverter part. And all they did was they were getting these, they were basically making up exercises. So we took all this course, and by the last day, they were teaching us about parameters. So once they saw that they were behind, that's where they started saying, oh, well, I mean, we have different courses, the advanced part, and it's a waste of money and time. Things that don't really work. So what really works, and is the main goal of this course, is that you guys need to learn how to program, and you need to learn how to configure all these drives. So by the end of this course, we're going to mess with our PowerFlex, and that's where we're going to start learning to program from scratch. On the device net, it's a lot of information for programming. That's what they're paying us for. Also, to learn how to detect any failures in the alarms for any type of drive. That's the main goal of this course. So therefore, I want you guys to focus. I want you guys to start, getting in sync with parameters, control speed, how many types you have, the digital part, the numerical part. So it's a big bombing. So I want you guys to make it very practical, and everything else that we see is going to be a big help to you guys on the field. That's why I didn't really go that deeper in our theoretical part. What's going to really help us out is this part. If you wish to learn something more in theory, you need to take a course in motors. Okay? If you wish to learn your part on how drives work, you need to take a course on how to repair drives. But that's not this course. This is about learning to program a drive. Okay? Now, what do I mean by parameters? General functioning parameters. Okay? They have a huge listing, each drive, for all parameters, for everything that we're able to control and everything that we can control. Now, in this case, there's always going to be a general display screen. So here on this side, this is your main screen. Now, what is it showing? It's showing us our current, our kilowatts, our potency that is handling out through a general way. So it's sending out our frequency or our current frequency, but not the commanded one. Now, what's the difference in this? Our commanded frequency is what I'm going to order my drive up to where can it start. What's it going to be its final speed? If I add 60 Hertz, those 60 Hertz is the commanded version. What's the current version or the real version speed? It's the speed where really is our drive or my motor starting up. For example, I'm going to add auto on, and this is our current speed. So it's simulating that it's running at 13.9 Hertz. So it's not getting our commanded speed. Now it's all the way down to 9.6 Hertz. So this is its amps, or its current, and on this side we have our potency. So if we stop this, it's going to tell us in real time its speed and how it's decreasing. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. So that's where it stops, and that's the real speed, the current speed. Okay, and now we are going to enter our parameter part. Okay, now why am I saying general functioning parameters? What are these about? Generally, our parameters come in that group which change the drive hour. They also change the language, or for us, if maybe the letter size is too small, the font size is too small, we can make it bigger. So we also have those parameters. And that's the first category for the parameters, the ones that we have. Now, where do we get this generally? Where can we see this? It all depends on each drive. But they should be in the first parameter group. Now here, all this regarding parameters, you need to analyze as if they were different files in a computer. For example, let's do this now. Let's run a drill. We're going to create here, and this is where we're going to go to Documents. We're going to go to Drive Course. We're going to create a file, a new file here. Okay. And now here we're going to go to New File, but we're going to name this as 15 Drive Course. I'm going to write this in Spanish, guys. Example parameters. Okay. Now, what are we going to do here? You guys need to think that this is a file over file over file group where we can start modifying our information and we can control our motor or our drive. Okay? So let's think about it this way. New file, and we're going to name this as P for parameter, and we're also going to add this as general functioning. So functioning, general functioning. Here we go. Again, I'm writing this in Spanish, but this needs to be P00. And then what am I saying on this? Information parameter for my motor. Okay, so we're going to change this here on this side to function in our motor for our motor information. Okay, so here it's P01. And then we create a different one. We create a different one which is P02. Motor control. What other one do we have here? We have this one. Here we go. And then we modify it. And we're going to go all the way to P03, which is our parameter group, which is input and output. And then P04, advanced parameters. Then P05, communication. And then reading or monitoring. And finally, P07, alarms and failures. Okay? Ready then. All right, so I created so that you guys could understand a little bit on how these parameters work. I created a group of different topics, okay? And in general, the way that these work, if I enter a list for all possible parameters related to the general functioning, for example, clock, language, font size, etc. So motor information, what am I going to see here? Well, here we were going to create so that you guys could see. We're going to create this so that you guys can have this clear. It's P01, motor information, and we're going to add here parameter 01. For example, and this 01, it should say voltage, okay? So create a different copy, but now it's going to say current, and it's going to be parameter number 2. Then we're going to create a different copy, and it's going to be potency. Okay. We created another copy, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So we're going to add one more. We have potency factor. Okay. So if you notice, this is a memory group. Parameters are a group of memories that are stored in our drive. And if we access these memories, we're going to start modifying all variables so that our drive can start controlling it in a better way than our motor is. Okay? Each file has its different memories and its controlled variables. Okay, so let's run this again. Same thing, but over here on the top. General functioning. We're going to change it here. P00. Functioning, general functioning. 001. And here we are going to add hour or time. So we're going to do the same here. We're going to eliminate this. We're going to modify this and make this language. Do the same thing here. And here, ultimately, this is going to be font size. Did you see this? Now, it could even be bigger, the list. But that list are different for each brand for the drives. And then on the motor control part, this is where we're going to start controlling all variables. Okay? If you notice here, this is for motor information, going back one more topic. That information is where we're going to enter our data plates. Our data plates that we got for our previous videos, that's where we're going to enter this. This is where it all brings us. Okay? So all this is about in your drives part, mostly, as far as configuration goes, is about parameter modifying. Okay? 70% of our drives is all about parameter configuration to enter data. Enter what it is that we want to do. The other part is the physical connection, the drive's physical connection. Okay? But this is what it's basically about. And here for motor control, well, this is our data plate. Okay? So motor control, what do we do here? We control up to what speed is my motor going to start for acceleration ramp, deceleration ramp, input, output. Okay? But still, don't worry, guys. All of these things we're going to look into through all this course. We're basically 10 hours into this before we can see this. Okay, so let's start right from the beginning, the most basic part. So motor control, it is what type of speed am I going to use? Am I going to carry? For our potency meter, from my keyboard, or even from my external buttons that I'm going to add for start and stop. Okay? Input and output. These are very important, guys. This is also comprised basically of configuration. So if we wish to start and stop our motor from external button, we need to specify what output this matches to for my regularly open voltage, which for example is my starting. And what input or output is it going to correspond for our stop. And also, if I want that, for example, that it gets to 40 Hertz, if I see that it gets to 40 Hertz and I want it to send an alarm, whether it's visual or auditive, that indicates that something is in danger, then what do I have to do? I have to direct that output. And then I have to configure it, okay? Which is basically a relay, okay? We can do this. We can do this actually with in our parameters part. So for our advanced part, we have our PID control. Any additional things, something that is a little bit more on the controller type, which is something very important. So here are our specialized parameters. This is what we need to learn. But it all depends on the application and how robust you want your system. Okay? But this is the most important part. We wish to run our communication through our Ethernet cable, or Profibus, or whatever. So what type of communication does our drive have? It all depends, but we're going to explain this further down. So reading or data monitoring. Here we have something that is pretty important, which not many drives specialists know about this. But if you already have experience configuring your drives, but then you maybe leave this on our, you maybe forget about this. But why data monitoring? Here, we're going to be able to observe our current that's been used in motion. So we're going to look into our peak current, which is going to help us out for our economical part, and also our inputs and outputs that are going to be activated. So that for us is going to be reading only. So here for our reading part, we're not going to be able to modify anything. We're not going to change a thing. That's why it's reading and monitoring. And on the failures and reading parts, we're going to see if we have some failure or fault in our alarm. Any alarms that is going to teach us. Now, this is very important. Once we configured, once they've praised us or paid us, and our equipment is functioning correctly, everything is summarized in running very good troubleshooting or diagnosing correctly an alarm or a failure. If we don't know how to do this, we're going to be in big trouble, guys. Okay? So it's going to be very complicated down the line. Why? Because if not, we're going to start, it's the blind leading the blind. We're going to be in our process. And if something stops, we're not going to know why something stopped. And then we're going to be in big trouble. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you an example. It's very, very simple, guys. I would like, having said this, all that I'm going to ask of you guys is please enter your data plates that we already saw previously. Okay, so here, go here on this side. For any data plate, it's optional. Whatever you wish. Okay? So, enter it in your emulator or your simulator. Now, how are you going to enter this? One option is main menu. And here, we're going to start looking into our files that we can benefit from when going into our data. So, this is our quick setup. Now, this is another piece of advice, guys. Generally, it's going to ask you for your devices type, for example, Danfoss. They get really concerned on the user part, which is something a little bit positive for this brand. So they give you many options on the initial configuration part. One of them is about changing the language. My recommendation is leave it in English. Do not change it to Spanish. Even if you say, well, I'm really not getting used to this, stay in English. English is very basic for all this. Okay? And I've been getting many, many questions about this. If it's absolutely necessary, my answer is always yes, 100%. It's not about making you feel bad. I don't want to make you guys feel something weird or something. If we don't know how to read a drive in English, let's suppose that Danfoss is in Spanish, and then comes in another brand that unfortunately is in a different language. So then what are we going to do? We're going to limit ourselves, or we're going to go all the way with that brand in English, and then are we going to try to get used to the language? So that's my recommendation. Leave it in English. even if I give you whatever, even if you see whatever language, you need to get used to that technical jargon, which unfortunately in our automation career, we're always going to look into. Okay, there's more softwares in Spanish than in English, but there's also many English softwares and not in Spanish. So through our computer keyboard, we can start pulling this down. And our quick setup is something very important to do so. So this is our default setup. And we can start checking our application. It's going to be running for our options for our quick configuration. 1. The exercise that I'm asking you for is that you enter your information for your main menu in option number 1. So here we see enter, and here we're going to go to motor data, and here we're going to start selecting our options. Now, I don't want to make this too obvious, I personally. So that's why I asked you guys to experiment this, to see how you can enter these parameters. For example, this is 4 kilowatts. And this drive, for example, is a little bit bigger. This one, for example. Well, I'm going to do ABB motors, which is an ABB motor. So it's telling me that if I wish for the first option, I need to have a star connection, and then I should enter 7.50 kilowatts. Actually, our max is 5.5, and our minimum is 1.5 kilowatts, 1.10 actually. So we're going to find a different one here. So here we go. All right, so this is 20, okay? Next one, 0.55 kilowatts. So I'm going to use this one. If you want, you can run this exercise, 1.3. We're going to leave it at 1.5. It's better. A little bit over than right on the edge. And now it's stored. So here on our bottom part, it's telling me that our initial value is for 4 kilowatts. However, I'm changing this to its current value to 1.5 kilowatts. So this is motor voltage. And I'd like this at delta or star. So I'm going to leave this as a delta. So 230 volts. Enter. Okay. And I'm going to navigate between these parameters, and that's why this is important. And I consider that it should be important to handle our parameters. So all this is parameters. So motor information, it's telling me first that it's my potency. And then if I go down, I would go then to my Rodrigo brand, for example, Rodrigo drives. So our other memory would be potency factor. But here, that's how they started. And then if I go further down, by pressing down, it's asking me for motor voltage. So then memory would be something like this. It would be here on the bottom part. Oh, didn't pull it down. So it should go, let's say, right here. That would be our drive. If I click down, now it's asking me for motor frequency. Okay? So I don't have this here. I should be uploading this and leave it there. So then this is how we start navigating with our memories or parameters for that same group. Placing motor information. So I select it, I enter, so I can modify. And then I go to 60 hertz. Let's see, the 60 hertz. Here we have 60 hertz, okay. So it's all about 60. Sorry, 50 hertz. It's giving me the option for 50 hertz. So we're going to leave it at 50 hertz. So if we go down, it's asking me for the motor current. So we're looking at it on this side, and its current is for 4.5 amps. So we select it, and here we're going to change it to 4.5. 4.5 amps. You see this? So it's pretty simple. And then 1420 RPMs, where we see our, we're gonna have to 1415. So actually, it's pretty similar to the one that we have. And that's where we're gonna stop. Okay. So all we're gonna do is we're going to enter our most common data. And then we have our back key. And that's all that I'm going to ask of you guys. Now, second exercise. We're going to head out to Quick Setup on this side. And all I want is that you guys do the same thing. That you enter your data. And this is a quick setup. Okay? So it's like you want to set up your motor. And if you want to start it, I recommend you do your quick configuration, your quick setup. So this menu, that's what this is for. And so that's when they have their different parameter files. Because basically it's the same thing for all brands. So here, the only option that it's asking us for is torque characteristics or application that we're going to be handling. This is incredible because the control type is already being calculated directly by knowing what type of application is it about. Is it a constant speed? Is it something that is changing for a certain time? Is it a relay, a compressor, etc.? So this is really helping us out by saving that control part at first sight. Further down, on our most advanced part, we're going to see what type of control we have, which is vector control, sensor control. So for now, it's all about you guys getting familiarized with our drives. Now here on this side, it's telling me CT compressor. What does CT mean? In case you guys see this on the field. And you say, what was CT? I never saw this. All right, so CT means constant torque. Okay? For our compressor. Okay, these are the letters. Now, the type of application for its compressor. We also have our single fan part or our AEO pump. And now this is a type of fan that we have. So on our bottom part, we have also our compressor, our AEO-CT compressor. What does AEO mean in this case? It is a part for the compressors where we generally see in Danfoss. It's a lettering that we use for, according to my memory, something that we use for electric energy. So AEO, I think, stands for Adaptive Energy Optimization. Okay, with constant torque. So in case you see this, this is energy saving, basically. An optimization for all potency that is running by starting this motor. Okay, now what else? We have a BT condensator. Okay, which is generally for thermal applications. Okay, so that's where Danfoss stopped. This is like a fake application, so this is the only thing that it's going to help you out with. We have also our back part, where we go back, and it's going to go all the way to the beginning. Now on the bottom, to go down, it's going to ask for the exact same thing. So the only difference here is the motor poles number. If you didn't know this, the motor pole number in induction motors are 4. Okay? So it's speed limits, upwards and downwards, so you guys can start adding all possible data. This is for first instance. It's the first time that you know about all parameters. So this is for so that you guys can start getting used to everything that has to do with displays or screens. You can start getting used to your data. Why specifically? Because everything that we have seen is the easiest part, so that you guys can know how to identify how to enter our data for our motor. Okay, so how should I do this to begin, to start off with? This is fundamental for the drive spark. And with this, we are done with this class. Run your exercises. Please, in case you have any questions, send it over to me, send me your comments, and I can gladly help out. Big hug, guys, and I'll see you on our next video.